Hi everybody, it's Carol. This is our week 5 video post, and I'm late doing my post this week because I have really had to rack my brain to come up with an experience from a face-to-face physical classroom experience that I found to be my best educational experience. And part of it is, I guess, that it was just a really, really long time ago. But I think the other thing is that I am somebody who loves to read. I love literature. And so I always think in those terms. And so I was thinking back to all the classes that I took. And I can honestly tell you there has not been a single 5-paragraph essay that I can recall that rocked my world. Not one. I can't remember a single one that I've written that I thought, that was my best educational experience. But what did come to mind was cinnamon rolls in home ec class in 8th grade. That was a really, really long time ago, but I have to tell you, the experience absolutely did rock my world, and I never knew that Mrs. Trippensey would make such an influence in my life. She didn't influence my academic life, and she didn't influence my career, but on a personal level, she gave me a passion for cooking that I've carried with me through the rest of my life. There was just something about going into that classroom. Of course, there was always the smell throughout the entire school. I wonder what they're doing in home ec. Oh, it smells so good. And we got to go in there when we were in home ec class, and you'd go in and you'd anticipate what you were going to cook and or bake. And Mrs. Trippensey would have the recipe up on the board, and you'd write it down on your little recipe book that you were making, your cookbook, and then you would go to your little kitchen and you would gather the ingredients and you would mix them up with your group and you would put them in your oven, and then you'd go sit at your table and you would wait, probably depending upon the length of time you might have to set the table and learn those little domestic skills, because back in the day that's what you did. And it was just a fabulous experience. I loved it. I mean, I can always remember it. And so what is the bottom line? Should I try and teach online cooking skills? Well, no, of course not. But I think that the bottom line is that active learning is really important, even to somebody who loves to read. And truly, I like writing a 5-paragraph essay. I like the whole form of it, but it is not something that makes me think, ooh, I get to do that. It is that experience of actually doing something. And so I think that I think about how I would translate this into an online experience. And so I tried to think of other things that were maybe a little bit more concrete, a little bit more school type things. And so later in life, in high school, I was on the yearbook staff, and one of the things that I did was yearbook layout and design. And so that's pretty much like we're doing with our digital storytelling project as well. You would take pictures and you would write captions and you'd crop them and you'd get them in the right order, and you would make what would be the pages of the yearbook. And I really liked that process as well. And so I think that sort of doing something creatively really speaks to me. And I think that that's something that I would like to do in an online class that I'm teaching. And even when I was teaching in a face-to-face class, I felt like that was important. One of the things that I did in my face-to-face classes was we created a class newspaper for Dickens' novel Great Expectations. And so each student would write an article. Each student in the class would write an article for the newspaper, and they could write an article that was based on something that happened in the novel to Pip or Miss Havisham or someone that was in the novel, or they could choose a topic to research, like something from that time period, or even something about writers of that time period, like Charles Dickens or something like that. If they thought that they were artistic, they could do a cartoon, or they could make an advertisement for something that might have been pertinent to that day. And so then we did a collaborative project then as a class, and we would print it out. And Dr. Langhorst's comments about going to a computer lab were really pertinent to me, because it was hard at that time. Kids didn't have keyboarding skills, and so to get it all typed up and printed out really took quite a feat. And as time progressed, as I taught later, and computer skills became better for kids, then they were able to do some of that typing, but they needed to have everything together. You couldn't create it when you went in there. They needed to have their article ready so that they could sit down and put it into the word processor. And so anyway, we put that together and it was a lot of fun. They enjoyed seeing the finished product. A typed product looked so much better than something that was handwritten, and they could see their printed off page with their name underneath, their little byline. And I just think that it was something that gave them pride in what they wrote and also gave them sort of a keepsake from the novel and helped to reinforce what they were learning. So I don't think that would translate to a college level course. But I do think, what would I do? How would I do this? And these were some ideas that I had. I thought, so when you go back to the idea of making cinnamon rolls, for instance, let's say you wanted to do a demonstration of some sort, a demonstration speech, which I love doing. The teacher in me loves to be, up front and center and showing somebody how to do something. And so I thought, what about that first week of class? Why not ask your students to demonstrate something that they can do or show something about themselves? And it could be something big. Say they're a surfer. They could still show some videotape of themselves surfing, and they could, put something together, some sort of a digital story or something that shows something that they can do. And I just thought that might be a good icebreaker and maybe more fun than reading a text post about themselves. And so that would be sort of that hands-on thing that we've talked about doing. I also think that they could maybe do um, a Glogster. I told you I think Glogster is just the bomb, and it is just really a different application for digital storytelling than what we're doing with Screencast-O-Matic and so on. It's not quite the same. It's more like Prezi, I suppose, but you can tell a story with it, and you can make the whole poster about yourself and tell different aspects of yourself. And so it could be a similar sort of thing if you want to do about yourself or if you want to do about some other topic. So I think that, again, you could use something like that to do a hands-on type experience, and I like that idea. And though I don't think that class newspaper would work, I also think you could even do something similar to that if you were doing a historic novel. I think you could do a blog where you have people contribute to it in the similar fashion of a newspaper, but they could choose whether they wanted to do a creative article about something that had to do with the novel, whether they wanted to write from the perspective of a character or give a character a voice that they didn't have in the novel, or if they wanted to write about something that was very research oriented, like to research a topic about that area or that era or something like that. So I think anything that you can get people doing where they're sort of moving, even if it's online, they may not be physically moving, but they're moving their brains from one screen to several screens means that's active learning. And I think from my perspective, someone who would be a self-admitted sit down, read a book, write a paper, I think that that's going to make that active learning happen and make it more interesting. So I'll be interested to see what you have to say. I hope I answered this the way it was supposed to be done. This is the way it struck me, and obviously I've struggled a little bit with this week. So again, I'll be anxious to hear what you say. See you next time.